Hi, I'm Laurence Parker-Brown. Welcome to the Inside Network. Joining us for this in-depth is the principal fixed income indices at S&P DJI. We'll be exploring fixed income, Jessica Tan. Jessica, thanks for joining us. Let's explore the first part, which is that for advisors that are less familiar with the bond and the fixed income component of a portfolio and how indices can help, the S&P ASX iBoxx Australian Fixed Income Index Series, what does that add to the market and what is it designed to measure?
So the S&P ASX iBoxx Australian Fixed Interest Index Series is meant to capture the investment grade, fixed rate, Australian dollar denominated bonds in the market. We have different sub-indices capturing different segments of the market, having maturity breakdown, sector breakdown, rating breakdown. That's helpful for market participants to sort of track the different segments of the market, how they have grown, how they have performed over the years. Because the history goes back to 2013, so that's like giving you at least 10 years of history. And in terms of the index itself, it actually captures the broad market, and so there's a lot of market participants who actually use it to understand how much has grown in the market. And one interesting fact that I can throw out there is there has been a trend of a lot of foreign issuers coming to market in the Australian dollar denominator market to try to issue bonds as well. We have seen a growth of 42% in the last 5 years itself. So that's quite a significant growth in terms of the market value of kangaroo bonds specifically.
Excellent. And let's think about the rigor of your process here, because that's very important for the flow-on effect to have a really clear criteria for inclusion. And that would sit across, as you mentioned, some subcategories, duration. So talk to us about the eligibility requirements to build these indices.
So for the S&P ASX iBoxx Australian Fixed Interest Indices, one of the things that we have to consider a lot when we try to build the index criteria is to make sure that we capture the most investable part of the universe, and there's sufficient liquidity in what we're capturing in the index. For example, one of the rules outright exclusion that we have done in terms of the index criteria is to exclude private placements, because that is only exclusive to a certain small group of investors, and it's not representative of what you can actually invest in if you were to have it in the index. And if the benchmark were to be used as for tracking, for example, then you will not be representative, you will not be investable in that sense. And also there are other criteria, for example, minimum amount outstanding to ensure that sufficient size is sort of captured in terms of the bond size. So there's sufficient liquidity and accessibility to each of the issuances. We have different minimum amount outstanding for different segments of the market. For example, for government, it's 2 billion, because actually a lot of the issuances that's coming out is actually bigger than that. So we wanted to represent it more adequately. And also in terms of the credit quality, we also have a more conservative approach. Different from our usual iBoxx indices, it actually has a more conservative approach. By that, what I mean is usually we take the three big credit rating agencies, credit assessment as part of the eligibility criteria. Usually it's average rating, but in the S&P ASX iBoxx Index Series, what we are using is actually the lowest rating. So the lowest rating of the three agencies have to be at least investment grade to qualify for the index. So those that have mixed ratings, some have one or two agencies rating them as high, you will not qualify for the index, for example.
So Jessica, you've noticed and noted for this interview that the Australian fixed income market has evolved considerably in the recent time period. Can you talk about what that's meant in terms of the index series and why you've ultimately refreshed it?
So the main reason for why we have done the transition is to actually provide more customization capabilities to our end clients. Think of us as a recipe creator. We examine the ingredients in the market, and by ingredients in this case will be bonds in the market. We try to assess like what is the natural amount that is available in the market itself. If we just look at it on a market value weighted basis, what is available out there by default, and then we try to understand the returns and risks objectives of the clients to design indices that can capture that in a recipe form with bond eligibility criteria. So moving it from S&P ASX to S&P ASX iBoxx index series, having that model gives us the ability to provide granularity in terms of the data that's available. So we have different data classifications in terms of the sectors, having different the data points in terms of seniority of debt, for example. Those allow us to actually build beyond beta solutions, a more diversified recipe, if you might, of the Australian fixed interest in market itself using our customization capabilities. So one of the things that we have done is actually build a diversified version of the Australian fixed interest index. If you look at the market value weight of the index itself, 90% of it is actually sovereign and sub-sovereign exposure, meaning government and semi-governments take up 90% of the index weight, and only 10% goes to corporates and non-government related exposure. So we actually created a very simple equal weight approach index called the diversified version of the index, and it actually provided historically, at least from up to today, historically every single year it actually outperformed the base index itself, which is the broad composite.
So Jessica, you've not only built out a refreshed iBoxx series, but there's this customization element, and you're looking at a subordinated debt index. What does that tell advisors about how indices are evolving, but also they can use these indexes to build a toolkit for their portfolio construction?
As I said earlier, we do look at the different ingredients that's available to us, and one of the striking things that popped out to us a few years ago was the growing population of subordinated debt in the market, specifically the tier 2s in the market. We launched the iBoxx Australian Dollar Investment Grade Subordinated Debt Mid-Price Index in 2020, and at the point in time it was only a 10 billion market value size in terms of this tier 2 market in Australia. And at this point, just for your information, it is about 25 billion at the moment in terms of size. So it has grown significantly, and that's also one of what we do usually is to also stay on top of what's going on in the market. And obviously, I think you might have heard of it, the APRA, the phase out of hybrids is happening. And so one of the things that has also affected the market, has caused a change in the market, is the growing population of subordinated debt. And that has the index itself only covers floating rate notes. But right now, there's a lot more fixed rate notes, fixed rate subordinated debt that's coming to market. And hence, that's why we launched the iBoxx Australian Dollar Fixed Investment Grade Subordinated Debt Mid-Price Index last year to start tracking this other growing population of tier 2s that's coming to market. The interesting thing is that in the last 3 years itself, the market has actually grown from 6 billion to 36 billion. So that's a 6-fold growth in terms of the fixed rate segment of the tier 2 markets. And this is obviously accelerated by the regulation change that's happening. And for us, it's important to sort of capture that, allowing market participants to track this growing population of subordinated debt in the market, having this distinction between floating rate and fixed allows market participants to sort of use it interchangeably to sort of measure the effects that interest rate volatility have on the market itself. And going back to customization, this is one of the things that having more granular data allows us to do, to be able to capture more specific segments of the market to provide that targeted exposure using our indices. So the S&P ASX iBoxx Australian Fixed Interest Index Series tend to capture the base, broad composite, more vanilla fixed rate portion of the market, and most of what is capturing is senior bonds, and the subordinated bonds would usually rank lower in terms of the capital structure. So in terms of the risk that you have the additional capital structure risk, which gives you more spread and more yield. You can get almost around 6% in terms of yield. So like 100 basis points pickup against what you get with the rest of the population of bonds or senior bonds. So it is, there is higher yield, but you also have to consider the additional capital structure risk that comes with it. So having the two segments in two different index series help market participants to be able to measure it and track it separately. And so we feel that would be complementary to each other within the Australian dollar market.
There's so much that you're doing, Jessica, and I think advisors can learn so much. So keep having the conversation, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Laurence.